Dr. Gomez is a researcher at the Ontario Veterinary College, and he has collaborated with researchers across North America to study the effects of antibiotics on the equine gut. Welcome, Dr. Gomez, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, Jackie, and thank you for having me today.
The thinking on how we use antibiotics is changing in the world of medicine, especially as we learn more about the impacts on the inhabitants of the gut. What did your study find on the use of antibiotics in horses?
Yes, you are right. We are rethinking the use of antimicrobials in horses because in different species in humans and lab animals, we have been shown that administered antibiotics can change the bacteria in the gut. And those changes are associated with diarrhea, colic, or some metabolic diseases. So basically, we designed this study in which we administer intravenous antimicrobials to these horses, and we look at how the bacterial population in the intestine changed. So the main findings is that there is an effect. It's very mild, but there is an effect on the microbial population of horses after administration of intravenous antimicrobials. And that may have an impact on the health of the horses because it's possible that those changes are associated with the development of diarrhea in some of those animals.
And can you go into, you said there's gastrointestinal disturbances. Can you go into the short-term and long-term effects?
Yes, good question. In this study, we collected fecal samples after 3 days, 5 days, and 30 days after administration the antimicrobials. And what we found is that the bacterial population started to change by day 3. And in some horses, depending on the antimicrobial that we administer, those changes can last up to 30 days. And this is in agreement with a previous study from the University of Guelph, led by Dr. Costa and Dr. Weiss, around 5 or 6 years ago. And they also found that administration of oral antibiotics can lead to long-term effects and long-term changes in the gut microbiota.
What kind of long-term changes?
Basically, some specific bacteria that are, for example, in our case, bacteria that is in charge of metabolizing the nutrients that the horses receive through the hay and through the forage. So there is a group of bacteria called Fibrobacters, and this is a specific group that is responsible of metabolizing some components in the hay and in the forage. And those bacteria are altered up to 30 days after administration of antimicrobial drugs. So in our study, we did not see any signs of colic or diarrhea, but it is possible that administration of antibiotics plus some changes in the environment also predispose those horses to develop diarrhea because the loss of some important taxa or some important bacteria that are responsible of metabolizing nutrients in the hay.
Does the microbial population of the gut bounce back after antibiotic treatment after a period of time?
Well, in this case, for some antibiotics, yes. But again, for some of them, it lasts up to 30 days. We don't know up to which day those changes are going to be present because our sample collection stopped at 30 days. It would be good to have another sample at 60 days to see how long those changes are lasting. That's a very good idea. We probably are going to develop a new project investigating for how long they are going to last, and then we probably need to collect samples a little bit longer.
In the meantime, is there a way to mitigate the effects of antibiotics, or are there alternative treatments that one should consider?
Yes, that's a very good question. So currently, some researchers and some clinicians have been proposed the use of probiotics, prebiotics, also to minimize the changes in the bacterial populations after administration of antimicrobial drugs. However, currently we don't have any evidence that support the use of probiotics, and some of the studies have shown that probiotics do not change the bacteria in the intestine. And actually, some studies from the University of Guelph, led by Dr. Schuster and Dr. Weiss, in foals demonstrate that foals receiving probiotics are more likely to develop diarrhea. So at this point, the only thing that we know is that probiotics do not change and do not improve the gut health of horses. It is possible that some owners notice some improvement. It is possible that some clinicians also notice some improvement on those horses, but the reality is that there is no experimental support for the use of probiotics in foals or in adult horses. Currently, we are analyzing the data of an experiment that we ran last year in which we administer oral antibiotics. So the previous study that we are talking about, it was administration of antibiotics intravenously. Right now, we are analyzing the data of an experiment in which we administer the antimicrobials orally. And we notice as well that there are some antimicrobials that produce major changes in the bacterial communities of the intestine, and there are other antibiotics that do not cause major changes in the microbial populations. And that is related to why some antibiotics are more likely to produce diarrhea and why others are not likely to predispose the horse to diarrhea or other gastrointestinal diseases. My last comment is that any antimicrobial can predispose the horse to develop gastrointestinal diseases. It does not happen often, but it could happen. And we need to be responsible when we are administering and deciding to administer antimicrobials to horses, not only because it may predispose to disease, diarrhea specifically, but also because we need to be responsible with the use of antimicrobials because the emerging of antimicrobial resistant bacteria that can lead to problems or a severe disease in horses, but also in humans. So try to avoid the use of antimicrobials as much as possible and always seek for advice from your veterinarian before administering antimicrobials to horses.